Lilies and Japanese Bridge by Claude Monet. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are stepping into one of the most serene and quietly revolutionary paintings in the history of Western art. Lilies and Japanese Bridge, painted by Claude Monet in 1899 and now held in the collection of the Princeton University Art Museum. But before we lose ourselves in those shimmering greens and blues, let us spend a moment with the man behind the canvas, because understanding Monet's life is essential to understanding why this painting exists at all. Oscar Claude Monet was born in Paris in 1840 and grew up in Normandy on the northern coast of France. From an early age, he showed a talent for drawing, though his path to fine art was anything but smooth. He struggled financially for decades, faced repeated rejection from the official Paris salon, and watched his first wife, Camille, die tragically young in 1879. He raised two sons largely on his own, moved constantly in search of affordable housing, and spent many years in genuine poverty. And yet, Monet never stopped painting. He was a founding member of the Impressionist movement, a group of painters who rejected the rigid, polished academic style of the day in favor of something far more honest. The fleeting impression of light on a surface, captured quickly, spontaneously, in the open air. In 1874, Monet showed a painting called Impression, Sunrise at a group exhibition in Paris. A hostile critic mocked the title, calling the whole movement Impressionist as an insult. The artists adopted the name proudly. By the 1880s and 1890s, Monet's reputation had finally begun to grow. He settled in the small village of Giverny in the Seine Valley, and there he did something remarkable. He did not just find a beautiful landscape to paint, he built one. He designed an elaborate water garden on land adjacent to his house, diverting a small river, planting Japanese water lilies, constructing a wooden footbridge in the Japanese style, and surrounding the pond with weeping willows, bamboo, irises, and wisteria. He called it simply his water garden. And for the last 3 decades of his life, it became his obsession, his laboratory, and his greatest subject. Now let us turn to the painting itself. What strikes you first, and almost overwhelms you, is the sheer density of green. This is not a painting of negative space or stillness. Every inch of the canvas is alive. The foliage cascades from the top left in loose, energetic strokes. Weeping willows trail their fingers downward, trees push outward in thick clusters of blue-green and yellow-green, and the whole upper half of the composition feels as though it is breathing, trembling slightly in a summer breeze. Then your eye finds the bridge. It arcs gently across the upper third of the canvas, its pale wooden railing rendered in short, confident strokes of white and blue and green. The bridge is simple, almost modest in its construction, a flat-topped Japanese footbridge, the kind you might see in a woodblock print by Hiroshige or Hokusai, artists Monet deeply admired. He owned a large collection of Japanese prints, and their influence is visible here not just in the subject, but in the compositional choices, the flattening of space, the cropping of forms at the edges, the elevation of a humble garden object to the status of an aesthetic icon. Below the bridge, the pond opens up, and here is where the painting becomes something close to miraculous. The water is not blue. It is not any single color. It is green and blue and violet and white and gold all at once, all shifting into one another, all reflecting the sky and the overhanging trees and the lily pads in a continuous, impossible shimmer. Monet has not painted water. He has painted the experience of looking at water on a warm day when everything seems to dissolve at the edges. The water lilies themselves, those famous blossoms, float across the surface in clusters of pink and white and pale yellow. They are painted with the same loose gestural brushwork as everything else, their forms suggested rather than described. Up close, this painting is almost abstract, a beautiful mess of paint. Step back, and the whole scene coheres with startling clarity. This tension between chaos and order, between the individual brushstroke and the overall impression, is at the very heart of Impressionism, and Monet understood it better than anyone. It is worth noting that this painting belongs to a series. Between 1896 and 1900, Monet produced roughly 18 views of the Japanese Bridge, all taken from the same vantage point at the edge of the pond, but varying in season, in time of day, in weather, and in the exact quality of light. He was fascinated by the way the same scene could look entirely different depending on these conditions. In some versions of the bridge, the water is warm and golden. In others, it is silver and gray. Here, in the Princeton version, it is overwhelmingly green, the deep, saturated green of high summer in northern France. As Monet aged, his water garden absorbed him entirely. He began the famous Late Water Lilies series, vast, panoramic canvases that practically eliminated the horizon, filling the frame with nothing but pond and reflection. And all the while, he was losing his sight. Cataracts clouded his vision progressively from around 1912 onward, and by his final years he was painting largely from memory and habit, his colors shifting toward orange and red as his damaged eyes filtered out the blues. He died in 1926 at the age of 86 in Giverny, not far from the garden he had spent 30 years creating. The garden still exists. You can visit it today. The Japanese bridge still stands, draped in wisteria. The water lilies still bloom each summer. And if you stand at the edge of that pond on a still morning, looking down at the reflections moving slowly across the surface, you will understand, viscerally, immediately, what Monet was chasing for all those decades. He was chasing the feeling that the world is not made of solid things, but of light passing through water, through leaves, through the trembling air between you and what you see. Water Lilies and Japanese Bridge is not just a beautiful painting. It is evidence that a person can spend a lifetime looking at one small pond and never exhaust what it has to teach. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, please consider subscribing. There are more paintings ahead, and each one has a story worth telling. See you next time.